Hi, I'm Natasha,
And I'm Allegra.
and together we are Beyond Your Wildest Dreams, or BYWD, as we like to call ourselves. And we just want to acknowledge you for showing up today and recognizing that you're wanting to learn some new skills. And honestly, that's the first step in creating change in your life.
Yes. In fact, it's studies show that helplessness, which is the idea that things just happen to you, is actually a learned behavior, but so is its opposite, which is grit. And so planning is a skill. It's a skill that anyone can learn. And as we like to say, planning makes everything easier.
And so Allegra and I together in BYWD, or Beyond Your Wildest Dreams, our mission is to help moms and caregivers prioritize themselves, save time, and achieve their goals. And while our strategies will work for anyone, we're always looking through the lens of people who have others making claims on your time. So, we're going to give you a dose today of what we're about by teaching you how to plan for your holidays so that you can have fun while getting things done.
And just to give you an idea of why this is so important, we have a little quote from Dr. Robert Epstein, who is a psychologist and a stress management expert. And he says that the best way to minimize stress is to fight it before it begins by planning things rather than just letting them happen. Right? It's better to be proactive than reactive. We call it living life by design rather than by default. So rather than just letting the holidays come at you like a speeding train, just take a little bit of time with us today and plan for them so that you can live the holiday season by design rather than by default. And if you're listening to this, whenever you're listening to this podcast, whether it's before the holiday season or after the holiday season, this is beneficial to you because we actually really are fans of doing a quote unquote post-mortem on your holiday season and saying, hey, what worked for you, what didn't work for you. So don't fear, no matter what time of year it is, this is something you can do.
Absolutely. So before we really get into this, we'd like for you to grab your handout. If you don't have a handout, go ahead and pause now and go get that PDF handout. And we'd like to get you into an exercise that's called What's Your Why? Maybe it comes from a feeling place like I'm peaceful, I'm connected, fun is how we do it. What is the word or phrase that captures your reason for the season? So again, it can become from a feeling place, or maybe you prefer to think in terms of activities. Like, I want to maximize memory making fun with my family. I want to have fun and stay on budget. I want to cook and stay home. We had a friend the other day just say she just wants to sit in front of the fireplace with warm, cozy socks and a cup of cocoa. That There's no wrong answer. Take
And
a
bake
few
an apple
minutes
pie.
and bake an apple pie, right? And have the smell of apple pie in the house while she's sitting there. So take a few minutes now to go ahead and do that. You can pause here and write down your reason for the season.
And just in case you don't have the worksheet in front of you, you can go to tinyurl.com/rock your holidays handout.
Great. So let's talk about the agenda now. First, we're just going to give you an introduction to who Allegra and I are. Then we're going to get into step one, which is basically a brain dump. And step two is figuring out what's really important. And then step three will be planning it out. And then at the end, we'll give you some bonus tips.
So we feel like this is a good place to just tell you a little bit about ourselves. As I mentioned, my name is Allegra, and I've been a planner my whole life. Planning is my love language, but I haven't always been a consistent planner. And I really can't. This came to a head about 8 years ago. So when my daughter was about 5 years old, and I was frustrated with the fact that I was having success in some areas of my life, but not others. And the areas where I was having success tended to be the business financial side, whereas I felt like my personal life, my relationships, my health, I was having meh results. And so I took a few days and I went to a monastery and just really took time to just think about why I was having success in some areas and not others. And what I realized was that I learned a lot about productivity and habit formation when I was getting my MBA. And I think because of that, I tended to use those skills in those areas of my life, the business financial side. And it just made so much sense to me. Like, I would come up with plans, I would execute on the plans, then I would say, hey, what worked, what didn't work? I would adjust things. why don't I try this in my personal life, my health, my relationships? And I did. And when I used that strategy, I was having the results that I wanted to see. Life by design rather than by default.
And my planning journey is a little different than Allegra's. I've been teaching privately with clients for over 15 years, performing for even longer, and a mom of two. So you can imagine, and maybe you can relate, I had a lot of massive to-do lists, and my planning was really great around contained events like party planning, events, concerts, that kind of thing. And when it came to my everyday life, things were really overwhelming. And when it came to my own personal goals, I was continuously back burner those things in lieu of whatever was happening in real time right then, whatever needed my attention. And so I was constantly taking things that really only had to do with me or goals that had to do with myself and putting them on the back burner. And I saw Allegra really kicking butt in life, homeschooling and going ahead and really rocking it out in her entrepreneurial efforts and her family going on a month-long trip to Oaxaca. And so I reached out to Allegra and I was like, girl,
This was
how do
many
you do
years
it?
after my
Yeah,
retreat.
right. Exactly. So this is post her
Monastery.
monastery retreat. Exactly. And I was like, girl, how do you do it? And so she really started informally coaching me, saying, hey, this is the planner I use. This is the way that I use it, and checking in with me. And through those conversations and recognizing that she really had this down, she was applying everything that she had learned in the other areas of her life in her personal life as well. We realized, wow, this is probably information that a lot of other people would benefit from too. And so out of those informal coaching sessions, BYWD was born. So that's a little bit about our personal journey. And so we'd love next to just point out and why it's important for you to plan your holidays.
Yeah, according to Healthline, 62% of Americans report that their stress levels are very or somewhat elevated during the holidays. And studies show also that women tend to feel that stress more heavily. They feel more responsible for making the holidays magical. And we believe that we, the magic makers, deserve some magic ourselves, which is really why we created this process for Rock Your Holidays. So, step one,
get to your handout. And no matter when you're watching this, as Allegra said, you're going to go ahead and write down everything you want to do this upcoming holiday season. So, or if it's post holiday season, go ahead and write down all the things that you did this past holiday season, and maybe even some things you didn't get to. Just do a brain dump. There's lots of benefits to doing a brain dump, getting it out of your head and onto paper. If you need to use the back of your handout, go right ahead and write down everything you want to do from October 1st to whichever holiday marks the end of your holiday marathon. And, if you celebrate Kings or Lunar New Year, feel free to include that too. Go ahead and pause here and take the time to do that now.
So since this is audio only, we can't show you our lists, but Natasha and I's lists are pretty comprehensive. We each have about 50 things written down between October and January. And some of these are big things like making sure I attend my child's holiday concert, making sure I attend my own holiday concert because I sing with a choral group, to little things like sending out holiday cards and making sure you have candy for trick-or-treating. And we just want to remind you, though, that this list is really just the big things. Like, for instance, there are some tasks, like let's say you're going to serve a holiday dinner that actually require many more steps before it. So keep that in mind, right? Like cooking a Thanksgiving turkey has about 3 shopping trips before you even get to the point of cooking things. So remember the invisible work that also is required to make these holiday wish list activities happen.
Right. So if you have a holiday party in November, maybe you send out the invitation electronically or otherwise in the end of October, that kind of thing.
So step 2, what's really important? This is where we want you to identify your priorities. many people will have a list of things they want to do, but they don't think about what's more or less important. And so you end up treating everything with the same importance. And I think that's when you end up in overwhelm saying yes to everything because you haven't taken just a little bit of time to think about, do I really want to do this thing? Like, for instance, I'm not a huge fan of going to big parties. And so when in December party invitations start showing up, because I know that I'm not a big fan of these, I can say yes to one, maybe two, and then, well, protecting my boundaries, not saying yes to any more big parties because that's just not my cup of tea. So we want you to look at that activity list that you created, and we want you to go through and rate everything on a scale of 1 to 3. 1 is number one priority. I never want to miss doing this thing, right? 2 is I'd love to do it. 3 is fun, but we can skip it. And I also think of 3 as a good thing to put down for things that maybe you don't do every year, but maybe you want to do them every 2 or 3 years. For our family, that's things like decorating floats in a local parade that happens. We do that every 2 or 3 years. It's fun, but it doesn't have to happen. So go ahead and pause this podcast and take a few minutes and give everything a score from 1 to 3. And just as an example of my December activities prioritized, I have about 20 things written down for December. And they're pretty equally, like a third are 1s, a third are 2s, and a third are 3s. And I do want to say that I do give one item a 0, which is hubby's work party. And the reason why I give it a 0 is because it's never even on my list, but I want to mention it because a lot of people have a work party as an event that they do in December. And my husband's been at the same job for decades. And we did attend the Christmas party at one point, or the holiday party at one point, but it's not required. He's at a big company, so people don't notice. And it wasn't really our cup of tea. And so we just made the decision not to think about it. And so every year we literally don't have the conversation anymore. Like, hey, do you want to go to it's just a known quantity that we don't go. And that's just a great way to protect my boundaries because it frees up space for other stuff.
Agreed. So you can even give an activity like that a 0.
We give you permission.
Yes, for sure. So hopefully you've gone ahead and you've done your first step, of course, the brain dump. Second step, prioritizing 1 through 3. And now we're going to get to the third step. And this is the fun part. You're going to calendar your activities. So that brain dump moves the lists from your brain to paper and putting it in space. And then calendaring moves it from paper on the list into your calendar, into time. So now you've got your activities in time and space. And this is the last step and probably the most important one.
And I'm just going to read to you a quote from our book on page 41. I love this quote. The key is not to prioritize your schedule, but to schedule your priorities.
Yeah, really important to make that distinction.
And we do have a few tips to think about as you are doing your calendaring. The first tip, we kind of mentioned it with step 1, which is don't forget all the pre-steps that are required, right? Thanksgiving dinner requires 3 shopping trips. You have to set up your table. You have to invite people. You have to figure out who to invite. There's lots of steps. So be sure to calendar those steps in as well. But another tip is to avoid shoulding on yourself. We have so many cultural and familial expectations, like you should do this, you should do that. No shoulding. You get to say no to things. Having boundaries is so important. Protecting your mental health is really important. And so, hey, if it's not something you want to do, it's not something you want to do. Our second tip is to divide and conquer. Kids have a ton of energy. They want to do all the things, but maybe you don't have the energy to do all the things, or maybe you don't even have the interest in doing all the things. Like in our regular life, my husband and daughter love monster trucks. Love monster trucks. It would pretty much be it would be a punishment taking me to a monster truck rally, but they love it. So they do it. My daughter and I love going to theater. My husband, he likes going to some shows, but not all. And so sometimes we divide and conquer, and you can do that in the holiday season. Maybe you're not a baker, but you have a friend who loves to bake. Well, see if that person will host your kiddos for baking. But let's say you love to do crafts, then you can offer to host those person's kiddos to do crafts. Divide and conquering is a fun way to share responsibilities. And our final tip is to keep fun fun. Like, I know,
Seems obvious, right? But, things can get very, expectations can make things unfun.
Exactly. And also, too, it's kind of related to avoid shoulding, but I just feel like keep fun fun is much clearer. If you're not sure if you should do something, ask yourself, is this fun? If it's not fun, don't do it. I actually first came up with this idea during my wedding, which was a long time ago. I've been married for 20 years. And I said to my mom, I don't need any flower arrangements. Flower arrangements are not fun for me. We're not doing flower arrangements. And my mom said, well, I was like, I don't even need a bouquet. Bouquet is not important to me. I don't want a bouquet. And my mom was like, but I love flowers. And I was like, okay, well, if you want to do the flowers, go ahead. It's fun for you. You do it. But I'm keeping fun fun. I thought my wedding should be fun. I can't, my mom was like, what? It's a wedding. You shouldn't have fun. But that was how I kept fun. And with the holidays, I enjoy doing holiday cards, but that enjoyment has changed over the years, depending on how busy I've been. And there were years where I don't do any holiday cards, or there are years when I would design the holiday card from scratch. And then there are the years when I just pick a template that's available from a printer. Things change. What's fun for you this year might not be fun for you in 2 years. So just keep that as a measure. Keep fun. It helps to establish that boundary really easily.
So bust out your calendar planner and start with your ones, put those in first, then move on to your twos and so on. Feel free to skip those threes or, say that's every other year activity. If it looks like too much, those are the things that should fall off the calendar first and foremost. If you don't have a planner, and you don't a physical planner or calendar, you can use the handout does have calendars there for you to use. So go ahead and feel free to use that. In fact, we do often recommend that you do use these sample calendars because it's something that will relate to some bonus tips, which we're about to talk to you about right now.
So go ahead and stop the podcast and do your calendaring.
Great. And we're back with our bonus tips now. So the first bonus tip is rinse and repeat, which is why I said go ahead and write it in this kind of sample calendar at the end of your handout, because you get to use this again next year and the year after and the year after. The other thing that we recommend bonus tip wise, is make invisible work visible. It can be frustrating when all your hard work goes unnoticed, but people are not mind readers. So take a page from The Office where you give your manager updates on what you're working on. If you're feeling taken for granted, talk about it. Start with, I'd like our family to have a wonderful season. I'm hoping we can bake cookies or go make snowmen in the snow and visit the grandparents. However, I can't do it all alone, and get their buy-in. Have them understand how much it takes to make these magical moments happen. We're not saying strip all the magic out of everything and start demanding things of everyone, but there are definitely things that are age appropriate that you can get the buy-in for your kids and certainly your partner.
So this is also a great way to introduce these ideas of planning to your kids. Like maybe you even do some of the prioritization with your family and say, hey, here are all the things I want to do. Did I forget anything? Maybe they'll throw things on, and then you'll say, okay, well, this is how many weekends there actually are. So this is how much we actually can do.
Right.
And have that conversation, have them help you rate the 1, 2, 3s. It's a good conversation to have anyway, just to see what people's priorities are. It'll make you more deeply connected as a family.
Absolutely. And it does introduce the kids into some of these executive function things that will become much more prevalent in their life later. Our other bonus tip is don't reinvent the wheel. If there's an event or a task that you do every year and there's basically the same set of steps or ingredients or whatever, go ahead and keep that list or that task as a document on your computer or a note on your phone and reuse it. I have a holiday party that we throw every single year, and I have a document. It includes all the recipes that I use for the items that I make, and a shopping list and the stores that I get to, and it even has like a list of pre-party tasks that, the list of stuff for my husband to do and for me to do and for my kiddos to do. So, and that just lives as a document on my computer, and I literally just print it out a few weeks before the party and use it. So don't reinvent the wheel. You've done the work already. Keep using it as you go along, and then feel free to edit as you go. So if you're halfway through November and the apple picking is behind you and Thanksgiving week is coming, you did an excellent job pre-gaming your holiday, and you've established your why. You did your brain dump. You did all those things. Maybe even calendared most of those threes along too. Everything seemed totally doable. And then you're feeling overwhelmed. It happens.
Mhm.
Okay. Feel free to go ahead and start culling the calendar. Get those threes out of there. It's more important that your why is what's achieved than it is that you get absolutely everything done.
Yeah, and you kind of have to edit as you go anyway, because unexpected opportunities will come up to you, will be presented to you in the form of invitations, etc. And that's where it's a great opportunity to, check back with your priorities and say, okay, we have a 3 scheduled or 2 scheduled for this Saturday, but we were just offered something that is a 1 for us. So you know what? We're going to do the 1. So it's not set in stone. This is all for you. So feel free to change it up.
So we've hoped that these tips have helped you and help you have a really magical holiday season for you, the magic maker. We have, we'd love to invite you to go ahead and check out our URL that will give you access to everything we do, bywdreams.com.
Our hope for you is a little more sparkle, a little less stress this holiday season. We wish you the best. Thanks.